The sun burned bright over the endless desert. Waves of heat moved across the sand like a living ocean. The desert world had no name in maps of traders or travelers. To most, it was a forgotten place, but for a small team of explorers, it was the center of a mystery waiting to be solved. The team arrived in a heavy transport ship that landed on the hard, flat ground near the foot of dry mountains. Dust rose high as the ship settled, and the air was heavy with silence. The desert gave no sound of birds or insects, only the faint whisper of wind. It was as if the place wanted to remain hidden forever. The leader of the team was a man named Arun. His voice was calm, and his eyes carried the weight of long journeys. With him were Mira, who was skilled in old languages, Rian, a builder of machines, and Leo, the youngest member who was full of questions. They had come from far away after following old star maps that spoke of a valley where kings of the past had vanished. These maps were found in a forgotten archive station drifting near the rim of the galaxy. The maps showed strange symbols of crowns and golden lines stretching across sand dunes. No one knew if they were truth or fable, but curiosity was a flame that guided humans into the unknown. So the team came, carrying food, water, and tools to search. Days passed as they crossed endless dunes in crawler machines. The desert was merciless. The sand tried to bury their tracks as if erasing their journey. At night, stars filled the sky so bright that the crew felt both small and powerful at the same time. On the fourth day, when hope was growing thin, Mira noticed something unusual. She pointed at a far ridge where stone shapes rose above the sand. At first, they seemed like natural rocks, but as they moved closer, their hearts began to pound. Before them stood enormous statues carved from dark stone. Each statue showed the face of a king wearing a crown. The crowns were shaped in styles that Mira had seen only in fragments of old texts. The statues were not broken, not eroded, but standing proud as if the builders had just left. The valley stretched before them, hidden between high cliffs. The statues lined the entrance like silent guards. Their faces were calm yet stern. It was as if they were watching the explorers, judging their worth. The team stepped out of their crawler and walked on the hot ground, eyes wide with awe. Aaron touched the base of one statue and felt cold stone, too cold for the burning desert sun. Something about it felt alive. "This place is untouched," Mira whispered. Her voice was filled with wonder. "No sandstorm has buried it. No time has broken it. It should not be possible." Leo, full of excitement, ran ahead but stopped when Aaron raised his hand. "Stay close," the leader said. "This place is not just old stone. There is meaning here. We must respect it." Rian scanned the statues with his handheld device. Strange energy lines glowed faintly on the surface. He shook his head. "This is not only art. There is hidden power inside these stones." As they walked deeper into the valley, the explorers noticed strange symbols carved into the ground. Mira bent down and brushed away sand, revealing long lines of writing. She traced them with her fingers. "These words speak of kings," she said softly. "They speak of rulers who were buried with their treasures untouched for all time. They call themselves the Silent Kings. They say the gold they carry is not for mortals to touch, but for the stars to remember." The team fell silent. The desert wind moved gently, as if carrying the whispers of the past. Night came and they set camp at the mouth of the valley. The statues looked even larger in the pale light of moons. The explorers sat around a small lamp, each lost in thought. Leo broke the silence. "Why would kings bury gold and not use it?" he asked. "Maybe it was more than gold," Arun replied. His voice was steady. "Maybe it was a test or a warning." Mira nodded slowly. "Civilizations rise and fall, but they leave messages for those who come after. Some are written in books, some in stone, and some in treasure never touched." Ryan looked at his scanner again. "Whatever the truth is, it is here, and it has waited for thousands of years for us to see." The valley stood silent, the statues unmoving, but the explorers felt the weight of unseen eyes. The ground seemed to breathe under the sand. Somewhere deep below, secrets of kings long gone waited to be uncovered. As the explorers closed their eyes to rest, the stars above watched with silent patience. The desert had hidden the valley for ages, but now it had revealed it. What the team would find in the days ahead would test not only their courage but the heart of humanity itself. For now, the valley remained still, guarding its ancient kings, while the humans dreamed of what lay buried with untouched gold. The morning sun rose over the desert cliffs, throwing long shadows across the valley of silent kings. The explorers woke early, their minds restless after a night filled with uneasy dreams. The statues still stood tall around them, their stone faces unreadable in the pale light. Aaron gathered the team near the crawler. His voice was calm but carried weight. Today we go deeper. Somewhere in this valley lies the truth of these kings. But remember, we are guests here. Respect is more important than discovery. The team nodded, though each carried different thoughts. Mira felt wonder and a hunger to understand the old words. Ryan wanted to uncover the secret of the strange energy his scanner detected. Leo was excited, imagining treasures hidden in the heart of the valley. Aaron, however, carried a quiet unease. His instincts told him this place was not simply a ruin, but something alive. They moved between the giant statues, following a path that curved into the cliffs. The walls rose higher as if the valley itself guided them forward. Soon they came upon a flat wall of dark stone that sealed the passage. It stood smooth and unbroken, yet at the center a circle of carved symbols glowed faintly, as if responding to their presence. Mira stepped closer, brushing sand away with her hands. These words say this is the resting place of kings. It warns all who come to turn back. It says gold is not wealth, but a mirror of the soul. If you reach for it, you will show who you are. Her words made the group silent. Even Leo, usually restless, grew thoughtful. Rian scanned the wall. There is no door here. But the stone is not natural. It is crafted with precision far beyond what these people should have known. He pressed his palm against the circle of symbols. The glow grew brighter. A soft hum filled the air. The explorers stepped back as the ground trembled slightly. Sand fell from the cliffs and the circle of symbols turned into a pattern of lines that spread across the wall. With a deep rumble, the stone split in the middle, opening slowly like the mouth of a giant beast. A rush of cold air spilled out, carrying the scent of dust and time. Beyond the opening stretched a wide corridor, tall and straight, with walls covered in gold and strange markings. The air was heavy but clean, as if the passage had been waiting for this moment. Leo's eyes widened with awe. It is real, he whispered. The tombs of the kings. Aaron held his light higher and stepped inside first. His footsteps echoed on the smooth stone floor. The others followed, their lamps cutting through the shadows. The walls shone even without light, reflecting faint glimmers as though the gold held its own fire. The explorers walked slowly, each step heavy with caution. Mira studied the carvings. They showed images of great rulers standing above crowds holding staffs of power. Ships shaped like stars hovered above, suggesting these kings ruled not only land but the skies. Look here, she said softly. This shows the kings giving gold to the heavens. It was not money for them. It was a promise. Further along, they reached a great hall where tall pillars stood like trees of stone. Each pillar was wrapped in golden bands, and between them lay statues of warriors kneeling in silence. Their faces were hidden under helmets, and their hands held long spears. These are guardians, Ryan said, scanning one. His device showed faint energy still inside. He frowned. It is old but not dead. They are waiting. The thought sent a shiver through the group. Leo reached out a hand, but Aaron caught his wrist firmly. Do not touch. Curiosity can lead to danger. They moved past the silent guardians and deeper into the hall. At the far end stood a massive door carved with crowns and suns. The crowns overlapped like layers of history, each one different as though showing many rulers across time. Mira read the inscription aloud. Here rest the silent kings. Their voices are quiet, but their lessons are eternal. Enter with honor or leave in shame. The team stood in silence. The meaning was clear. The kings had left their resting place not as treasure for thieves, but as a trial for those who entered. Aaron turned to the group. We have found what no one else has. But this is only the beginning. We must decide carefully how far we go. Every step forward will test us. Ryan's eyes shone with determination. We came here to uncover the truth. If we stop now, we will never know. Mira nodded slowly. Knowledge waits inside. But knowledge has a cost. Leo, unable to hold back his excitement, whispered, What if the gold is endless? What if it can change the future of humanity? Arun looked at him firmly. Gold can change many things. But what will it change in us? That is the greater question. The explorers placed their hands on the heavy door together. The metal was cold as if the kings themselves were watching from beyond. With a low groan, the door began to shift, and the chamber beyond waited in darkness. The valley outside remained silent. the statues unmoving. Yet the explorers felt the weight of history pressing on their shoulders. What they had entered was not just a tomb. It was a world of secrets, built to test those who dared to step inside. And now, the test had begun. The heavy door opened slowly, its deep sound echoing across the stone walls. A wave of cold air poured out, carrying the scent of age and silence. The explorers stepped forward, their lights shining into the dark chamber. What they saw made them stop in awe. The chamber stretched wider than any hall they had seen before. Pillars rose like giants, their surfaces covered with gold that glimmered faintly even without light. The walls were decorated with carvings of kings seated on thrones, their crowns tall, their eyes stern. Between the carvings were wide bands of gold shaped into flowing rivers. The explorers walked carefully, their footsteps echoing. Every sound felt too loud, as if the hall itself was listening. Mira touched the carvings gently, her fingers tracing the patterns. These kings wanted to be remembered not only as rulers of men but as rulers of stars, she said softly. Look here. They are shown holding suns in their hands. Rian scanned one of the golden pillars. His device gave strange readings, numbers that made no sense. The gold here is not ordinary, he said. It holds energy, almost like a machine hidden in the metal. Leo's eyes sparkled as he looked around. It is more gold than I have ever seen. Enough to build cities, enough to change the world. His voice trembled with excitement. Aaron placed a hand on his shoulder. His tone was steady. Do not let greed guide you. Remember the warnings. The gold is not only treasure, it is something else. They moved deeper into the hall. Between the pillars stood statues of kings, each one different, but all with crowns of shining metal. Some held staffs, some held blades, and others simply raised their hands as if blessing or commanding. Their eyes, carved from dark stone, seemed alive in the lamplight. The explorers felt the weight of those eyes. Though the statues were silent, it was as if the kings judged their every step. At the center of the hall stood a long table made of black stone. Upon it were golden objects, crowns, rings, cups, and ornaments shaped like stars. None of them showed dust. They shone as if newly crafted. Mira leaned closer, whispering, It is untouched. No one has entered here before us, Ryan frowned. Or perhaps those who did never returned. The words made the hall feel colder. Leo reached a hand toward a golden crown, but Arun's voice stopped him. Do not touch. This place is not made for us to take from. Leo pulled his hand back, but his eyes lingered on the crown, the temptation still burning inside him. The team continued forward until they reached the far side of the hall. There they found another doorway, tall and narrow, with golden doors engraved with suns and moons. The surface shone like a mirror, reflecting their faces back at them. Mira studied the inscription above the doors. Her voice was low as she translated. It says, Beyond this gate lies the resting chamber of kings. Gold is the test. The one who takes it awakens the guardians. The one who resists earns the wisdom of stars. The explorers exchanged uneasy glances. The meaning was clear. The treasures were not gifts. They were traps. Rian looked back at the hall. If these are traps, then why leave them so open? Aaron replied quietly. Because the test is not hidden. It is plain before us. The kings wanted us to choose. Will we take or will we walk past? The team stood in silence for a long moment. Leo shifted uneasily, his young face filled with conflict. Mira placed a hand on his arm. Remember, some treasures are not made for hands, but for hearts. They pushed open the golden doors together. The doors moved with ease, as if expecting them. A deep hum filled the air, and for a moment the explorers felt the ground vibrate under their feet. Then silence returned. The next chamber was smaller, but even more breathtaking. The floor was made of smooth stone, polished until it reflected like water. Along the walls, golden panels showed scenes of kings traveling among the stars in great ships. The images suggested power far beyond what ancient people should have known. At the center of the chamber was a wide staircase leading down into darkness. The steps were lined with strips of gold glowing faintly like a path of fire. Aaron raised his lamp, his voice calm. This is the way forward. But with every step the test grows stronger. Mira studied the walls again. Her voice trembled. These kings were not just rulers of a desert world. They were travelers of galaxies. Their wisdom was vast, their reach unmeasurable. If their tombs are this great, what lies deeper may change everything we know. The group stood at the top of the staircase. Behind them lay the Golden Hall, filled with silent statues and untouched treasure. Ahead of them lay darkness waiting to be revealed. Aaron looked at his team. His eyes were steady, his voice firm. We came seeking knowledge, not wealth. If we forget that, we will fail. Let us move forward together. The explorers began their descent, their lights glowing faintly against the golden path. Each step echoed like a heartbeat, the silence pressing heavy around them. Behind them, the golden crowns and ornaments shone in the empty hall, untouched, waiting for the next test of humanity's soul. The kings remained silent, but the weight of their judgment followed the explorers into the depths. The golden steps carried the explorers deeper into the earth. Their lamps threw long shadows on the walls, where more carvings told stories of kings ruling not only deserts but stars. The silence was heavy, broken only by the steady sound of boots on stone. Each step seemed to carry them further away from the world above and closer to something waiting in the dark. At the bottom of the staircase, the passage opened into a vast chamber. The ceiling was high, lost in shadow, but faint lights glowed from lines carved into the walls. They pulsed softly as if alive, guiding the explorers forward. Aaron raised his lamp and the sight before them froze the group in place. Rows of tall figures stood along the walls. They were not statues of kings but warriors. Their bodies were shaped from stone and metal, their armor polished, their spears tall as trees. Each warrior stood perfectly still, their heads bowed slightly as if waiting for a command. Leo whispered, his voice small. "They look alive." Ryan's scanner beeped with strange signals. He adjusted the settings, frowning as he read the results. "There is energy inside them, faint but steady. These are not only statues, they are machines, guardians." Mira shivered as she looked at their blank faces. They have waited here for thousands of years, silent and patient. The kings left them to guard what lies beyond. The explorers walked slowly between the rows of guardians. The air felt heavier here, thick with an unseen presence. Every step echoed too loudly, bouncing off the stone walls. It felt like walking in the heart of an army that could awaken at any moment. Arun's voice was calm but firm. "Do not touch them. Do not make sudden moves. They are watchers. Let them remain asleep." But curiosity burned in Rian's mind. He moved closer to one guardian, his scanner sweeping across the surface. The readings showed layers of hidden parts, gears, wires, and cores of glowing energy. He whispered, almost to himself, "This is far beyond what we know. They are more than machines. They are a link between stone and star." As his hand brushed against the cold armor of the guardian, a faint hum spread through the chamber. The warrior's eyes flickered with a dim red light before fading again. The explorers froze, their breaths held. The hum vanished, leaving silence once more. But the air felt different, charged with tension. Aaron's gaze turned sharp. "Enough, we are not here to wake them. We move forward now." They continued past the guardians, hearts pounding. At the far end of the chamber stood another set of doors, taller than all the others they had seen. These doors were carved with images of battles, kings leading armies not only on land but also in the skies. Ships shaped like blades flew among stars, firing beams of light at enemies unseen. Mira studied the carvings, her voice soft. The kings fought wars beyond this world. These guardians are not just protectors of tombs. They are soldiers of forgotten battles. The explorers stood before the doors. A faint glow came from symbols carved across their surface. Ryan touched them, and once again the glow grew brighter. The ground trembled slightly, and the great doors began to open with a slow grinding sound. Beyond was a corridor lined with more guardians, kneeling this time, their heads bowed lower in deep silence. The explorers moved carefully, their lights shaking slightly in their hands. Halfway down the corridor, Mira stopped and pointed to an inscription carved on the wall. She read aloud, "The kings are silent, but their guardians listen. If greed guides the hand, the guardians will rise. If honor guides the heart, the guardians will bow." The words sank deep into each of them. They realized the test was not just about treasure. It was about who they were. Leo's voice trembled. "What if we fail? What if one of us makes the wrong choice?" Aaron placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "Then we face what comes. But remember this. The guardians watch not only our actions but our hearts. We must remain true." The corridor led to another chamber, smaller than the last but filled with strange objects. Golden panels lined the walls, showing stars, planets, and ships. At the center of the chamber was a raised platform, and upon it rested a massive sealed chest. The chest was covered in carvings of crowns and suns glowing faintly in the dark. The explorers circled it slowly, their eyes wide. Ryan scanned it, his device buzzing loudly. The chest is alive with energy. It could power entire cities for centuries. Whatever is inside, it is not simple gold. Mira traced the carvings carefully. The words here say, "This chest holds the memory of kings. Open it and the guardians will ask their question. Only the worthy may carry the answer." The explorers exchanged uneasy glances. They had reached the heart of the trial. The guardians behind them stood silent, but their presence filled the air like the weight of mountains. Aaron looked at his team. His voice was calm, steady, and heavy with meaning. "We are close to the truth. But remember, the guardians wait for our choice. If we let greed rule us, we will not leave this place. If we seek wisdom, we may pass." The explorers stood in silence, the glowing chest before them, the silent guardians behind. The air was thick with expectation. The kings of old had set their test, and the moment of choice was near. The sealed chest glowed softly on the raised platform, its golden carvings shining like a small sun in the dark chamber. The explorers stood around it, their lamps casting shifting shadows on the walls where guardians knelt in silence. The air was heavy, filled with an unseen weight, as though the kings of the past were watching through time. Aaron studied the chest with steady eyes. He did not move too close. Instead, he spoke with calm caution. "This is not simple treasure. It is a message left for those who dare to come here. We must treat it with respect." Mira knelt by the platform, brushing her hands gently across the carvings. The symbols were strange yet familiar, their meaning carried in rhythm and shape rather than direct words. She closed her eyes and let her mind follow the lines. When she spoke, her voice was low but clear. "It says the kings ruled not only this desert but the stars. They commanded ships that traveled through endless skies. Their power was vast, yet they knew it would one day end. So they built this valley. They built guardians to protect their story. They buried their gold not to be used, but to test those who came after." Leo frowned, his young face troubled. "But why gold? Why not write their story in books or leave it in stone?" Mira pointed to the carvings. "Because gold tempts. Gold calls to the heart. It shows who you truly are. If someone enters only to steal, the guardians rise. But if someone seeks wisdom, the guardians allow the path to open." Ryan scanned the chest with his device. Strange readings filled the screen. Inside is not gold at all. It is some kind of data core. A memory system older than anything I have seen. It holds knowledge, not wealth. The team stood in silence, the truth sinking in. The untouched gold in the halls above, the crowns and ornaments on the black stone table, the glowing walls. It was all part of the trial. The kings had left wealth beyond measure, but it was not meant to be taken. It was bait. Aaron nodded slowly. They wanted to see if we would resist. To them, the measure of worth was not strength or greed, but restraint. The gold was the mirror. What we chose to do with it revealed our hearts. Leo lowered his eyes, ashamed. He remembered how close he had been to touching the crown in the golden hall. If I had taken it, the guardians would have awakened. We would have been destroyed. Mira placed a gentle hand on his arm. But you did not. You listened. That is what matters. The explorers looked again at the chest. It was more than an object. It was a voice from the past carrying across the ages, but opening it carried risk. Rion's eyes glowed with curiosity. If this truly is knowledge of the kings, it could change humanity forever. We could learn from their journeys, their ships, their power. We could grow. Aaron studied him carefully. Or we could repeat their mistakes. Knowledge is power, and power can destroy as much as it can build. We must be careful. The team gathered their courage and together placed their hands on the carvings of the chest. The glow brightened and the ground trembled softly. The kneeling guardians lifted their heads slightly, their eyes glowing faint red as if waiting for the outcome. The lid of the chest opened slowly, without sound. Inside was not treasure, not gold or jewels, but a crystal sphere floating above a cradle of light. The sphere shimmered with shifting stars as though it held an entire sky within. Mira's breath caught. It is a memory of the kings. The sphere rose gently, glowing brighter. Then a voice filled the chamber. It was not spoken in words, but carried in the heart of each explorer, clear and strong. We are the silent kings. We ruled with power that reached beyond suns. But power's a storm and storms pass. We chose silence, not to be forgotten, but to be remembered in truth. The gold you see is not our gift. It is our trial. For those who take it show greed. For those who resist show wisdom. And wisdom is the true treasure. The explorers stood still, their hearts heavy with awe. The voice continued. We give no wealth of metal, no crowns of power. We give memory. We give lesson. Those who listen may rise. Those who ignore may fall as we did. The crystal sphere pulsed and images filled their minds. Great ships soaring among stars, fleets moving like rivers of light. Battles fought with weapons that could break worlds. Then silence, a collapse, a fall of kingdoms swallowed by their own pride. Aaron clenched his fists. He felt the weight of the message. The kings had fallen not because of weakness, but because of greed and arrogance. Their silence was their final teaching. The sphere dimmed, settling back into the chest. The guardians lowered their heads again, eyes fading to darkness. The chamber grew still. Mira's voice was soft. They wanted us to see. They wanted us to learn. Ryan nodded, though his eyes still lingered on the chest. Knowledge is here. But not for the greedy. Only for the wise. Aaron looked at his team, his voice firm. Then we must carry this message, not the gold. The lesson of the kings is greater than treasure. We must take it to humanity, to remind them that strength is not in wealth, but in the choices we make. The explorers stood together in the chamber, the glowing chest behind them, the guardians silent once more. They knew the path ahead would not be easy. Knowledge could inspire, but it could also tempt. Yet they also knew that humanity's heart would be tested, just as theirs had been. The kings had spoken. Now it was humanity's turn to answer. The chamber was silent after the voice of the kings faded. The explorers stood still, their hearts heavy with the weight of what they had seen. The crystal sphere rested once more inside the glowing chest, dim but alive, carrying the memory of empires long gone. The guardians around them knelt with bowed heads, their eyes dark once again. For a moment, peace filled the air. The explorers felt they had passed the test. Yet beneath that peace, tension lingered like a storm waiting to break. Aaron spoke first, his tone calm but firm. We have what we came for. The kings gave us their message, their wisdom. That is enough. We should leave while the guardians remain silent. Mira nodded, her eyes thoughtful. Yes, their lesson is not for us to own, but to carry. If we take more than this, we may lose everything. But Ryan's gaze lingered on the chest. His scanner still flickered with strange signals. Inside that sphere lies knowledge far beyond what we have. The energy, the designs of their ships, their weapons. With this, humanity could rise faster than ever before. Aaron met his eyes steadily. Or we could fall as they did. The kings themselves said so. Ryan clenched his fists, torn between reason and desire. He had always believed knowledge should never be left buried. Yet something deeper, a restless hunger, pulled at him. Leo, the youngest, broke the silence. What about the gold in the halls? It is still there, untouched. If we brought even a little back, no one would believe it was only a test. They would call us fools for leaving it. Aaron's voice hardened. If we take the gold, the guardians will awaken. You saw the warning. You heard the message. Leo lowered his eyes, shame burning in him. But temptation was a shadow that would not leave easily. They began their walk back toward the golden halls. The corridor was dark, the walls glowing faintly with golden lines. The guardians stood on both sides, still and silent, but their presence pressed on the explorers like mountains of stone. As they stepped into the hall once more, the treasures shone as brightly as before. The crowns and ornaments glittered, waiting. The king's statues looked down upon the explorers, their stone eyes sharp, as if measuring every thought. Aaron led the way, his steps steady. Mira followed close, her hands clenched to keep her will strong. Leo walked slowly, his eyes trying to look away from the shining crowns. Ryan, however, stopped at the table of treasures. His voice was low, tense. We cannot leave this behind. Do you not see? This is more than a test. This is a gift. They left the gold, the knowledge, all of it, for us to continue what they began. Aaron turned sharply. No. They left it as a warning. Rian, step away. But Rian's hand hovered over a golden staff, the surface smooth and glowing faintly in the dark. His breath quickened. The guardians in the chamber behind them seemed to stir, though they did not move. "Ryan," Mira whispered, fear in her voice. "Please, do not." Yet desire overcame reason. Ryan grasped the staff. At once the hall came alive. A deep rumble shook the ground, dust falling from the ceiling. The golden walls glowed brighter, and the statues of kings seemed to burn with light in their stone eyes. From the far end of the chamber, the first guardian lifted its head, eyes blazing red. One by one, the rows of warriors rose. Stone and metal moved like living flesh, spears lifting high, steps echoing like thunder. The silent guardians had awakened. Leo cried out, stumbling backward. "They are alive!" Aaron drew his team close, shouting above the rising roar. "Run! Leave the gold, leave everything!" The explorers sprinted toward the open doors, their lamps shaking wildly. Behind them, the guardians marched with heavy steps, their spears striking the ground in rhythm. The sound was like drums of war. Mira glanced back and saw one guardian's face. Its eyes glowed with fire, its armor shining with ancient power. Though silent, its presence screamed judgment. The team raced through the corridor, the glowing lines on the walls flashing brighter as if carrying alarm. The ground shook with every step of the guardians. Ryan still clutched the golden staff, his face twisted with both fear and pride. "I have it. Do you not see? They will not stop us. This is ours now." But Arun's voice cut through the chaos. "Fool, you doomed us all." The guardians moved faster, their long strides closing the distance. One raised its spear, and a beam of light shot past the explorers, scorching the stone wall. The chamber blazed with power. The explorers burst into the golden hall above, the statues towering over them. The treasures glittered, but none dared to look now. Only the path out mattered. The ground shook harder as the guardians closed in. The explorers ran with every ounce of strength, the echoes of war following them through the valley of silent kings. As they neared the outer gate, Aaron shouted, his voice raw with command. "Ryan, drop it! Drop the staff or we will all fall here!" For a long heartbeat, Ryan hesitated. The staff burned in his hands, golden light surging across it. His pride screamed to hold on. But the guardians' roar filled the chamber, their red eyes burning closer. At last, Ryan hurled the staff to the ground. The golden glow shattered, and the hall fell silent. The guardians froze mid-step, their eyes flickering. Then slowly they bowed their heads again and returned to stillness. The explorers collapsed on the floor, breathing hard, hearts pounding. The valley was silent once more, but the warning of the kings had been proven true. The temptation of gold had awakened judgment. Only restraint had saved them. The golden hall was quiet once more. Dust floated gently through the air, settling on the treasures that shone in the soft light. The explorers lay on the cold stone floor, their breaths heavy, their hearts still racing from the terror of what they had faced. The guardians had returned. To their silent watch, their red eyes dark once again. It was as if nothing had happened, as if the storm of power had been only a dream. But it was no dream. The team had seen the valley's true strength, and they knew what it meant. The kings had been clear. The gold was temptation, and those who took it would face judgment. Humanity's test was not of strength, but of wisdom. Aaron rose slowly, his body aching but his eyes steady. He looked at each of his team members. Mira sat against the wall, pale but calm, her hands trembling from what they had endured. Leo stared at the statues of the kings, shame heavy in his gaze. And Ryan knelt on the floor where he had dropped the staff, his head bowed low, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Aaron spoke with a voice that carried both firmness and compassion. "We know the truth now. We have seen what the kings left behind. It is not ours to take. It is ours to remember." Mira nodded. "They did not fail us. They gave us wisdom. That is greater than any treasure," Leo whispered, his voice quiet. "But what will others say when we return? They will ask about the gold. They will say we left it like fools." Arun placed a hand on his shoulder. "Let them say what they wish. We carry the truth. That is heavier than all the gold in this valley." Ryan finally lifted his head. His eyes were full of regret. I thought I was strong. I thought knowledge was worth any risk, but I was wrong. I almost destroyed us all. Aaron met his gaze. You are not the first to fall to temptation, and you will not be the last. What matters is what you choose now. Will you carry this lesson, or will you let it consume you? Ryan's shoulders shook, but he nodded. I will carry it, I swear. The team gathered their strength and began the walk toward the outer gate. The golden halls glimmered as they passed, but no one looked at the treasures now. Their eyes were fixed forward, on the path that led out of the valley. The guardians watched silently from their places, like statues carved from time itself. When they reached the great stone gate, it opened slowly as if pushed by an unseen hand. Warm desert air flowed in, carrying the scent of sand and freedom. The explorers stepped outside, and the gate closed behind them with a deep echo that rolled across the valley. The Valley of Silent Kings lay quiet under the bright sun. The towering statues cast long shadows across the sand, their faces calm, their eyes fixed on eternity. For a moment, the explorers stood still, gazing at the valley that had tested them. Mira spoke softly. This place will remain as it is, untouched, waiting for the next who dares to enter. Aaron answered, and we will make sure they know the truth, so they do not make the same mistake. The journey back across the desert was long and silent. Each step felt heavy, but not with regret, rather with the weight of responsibility. They carried no gold, no staff, no relics, only the memory of the kings and the wisdom of restraint. When they reached their ship, the explorers paused one last time, looking back toward the horizon where the statues rose in the distance. The valley seemed almost alive, a guardian of secrets older than memory. Leo whispered, Do you think humanity will listen to us? Aaron answered with quiet strength. They will listen if we speak with truth, and if they do not, then we must keep speaking until they do. That is our duty now. The ship lifted from the desert, engines roaring as it rose into the sky. The Valley of Silent Kings grew smaller and smaller, until it was only a shadow among the sands. Then it vanished from sight, hidden once more in its eternal silence. Inside the ship, the explorers gathered in the main chamber. Aaron looked at his team with pride. They were weary, scarred, but alive. And more than that, they were wiser than before. Mira smiled faintly. We returned with empty hands, yet I feel richer than ever. Ryan spoke with quiet conviction. The king showed us what happens when power is placed above wisdom. We must not repeat their fall. If humanity learns this, then perhaps one day we will rise higher than even they did. Aaron's eyes shone with resolve. Yes, that is what makes us human. Not greed, not strength, but the choice to turn away from what can destroy us. That is the treasure we carry. The ship cut through the sky, leaving the desert behind, heading toward the stars. The explorers knew their path would not be easy. There would be those who mocked them, those who doubted their story, those who hungered for the gold they had left untouched. But none of that mattered. They had looked into the heart of temptation and walked away. They had proven that humanity was capable of more than hunger for wealth. They had shown courage not in battle, but in restraint. And so, the legacy of the Silent Kings lived on, not in gold, not in weapons, not in ruins, but in the hearts of those who carried their wisdom forward. Humanity had faced the test, humanity had chosen well, and in that choice they proved themselves worthy of the stars.